Hello, Smart 24 TV, and in case you just joined in, this is SMB. I'm Rita Cavaniero, and like I said earlier, just to repeat for you in case you just joined in, it's the 9th of September, and we're expecting the budget conference that will be happening at Kololo Independence Grounds, and we expect President Museveni to be there officiating the financial year 2022-2023 budget that will be taking place around there under the theme industrialization for inclusive growth, employment and wealth creation. And before we take sorry, my table is a bit shaking. I think it when we speak about budget, things a little bit shaking a lot. But joining me now is Juliet AKELLO from CSBAG, one of CSBAG, one of the civil society organizations that highly advocate for budget understanding, checking on taxation, and we make sure that the economy is moving on very well. And Juliet AKELLO here is going to be diving us through how so far we are ongoing and expectations on this particular one of the financial year 2022-2023 financial budget. Juliet, thank you for having come around. Thank you for honoring our event.
Thank you.
I mean, Rita. Our invitation.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you for hosting me.
I hope CSBAG is doing very well. Yes. If you could now shine a light on what you have been observing, because so far we are moving on greatly with the financial year 2020-2021, which started actually this year's June. So how have you been observant regarding how we are so far moving?
Good morning, viewers. Thank you, Rita, for having me for this session. Now, CSBAG in full is civil society budget advocacy group. So much of our work revolves around the budget. And maybe just to say, the budget is one of those components that we rely on a lot in terms of our analysis, in terms of our advocacy. It is our source document. And of course, coining it out from the public financial management area, the budget is really very central. Because then you cannot do public financial management advocacy outside the budget. So basically that is what we look at. But considering how our budgets have been performing in the recent, maybe about 1 or 2 financial years, previously our performance on the budget would be predictable enough. But now, because COVID came in since the financial year 2019-2020, there has been a bit of destabilization in terms of the budget performance, in terms of the allocations, because COVID being an emergency kind of occurrence, there has been a lot of supplementary budgets coming through. There has been a lot of acquiring of loans coming through to actually try as much as possible to deal with the COVID emergencies. So that has destabilized our budget performance and implementation.
Yeah. Very, and we still really see that, because we see this financial year's budget was cut off around 900 billion. That was now allocated to be around 44.7 trillion. That is now what we have compared to 2019-2020. And if we were to look at the allocations, how they have been, let us first kick it from the Ministry of Health, which is a very sensitive part even when we speak as of now, because even this one, there will be, the conference is also highlighting onto vaccination, a really call into the health system. Was it fair, or is it still fair when we were still in COVID-19? We had gone past an experience, and even the previous budget we came in, the financial year we are in now, the planning process came in around May, between May around May, and we, as a country, we were still experiencing highlights of COVID-19. I mean, am I right to say there was a wrong planning or insufficient planning? Because when we see that now the Ministry of Finance came out to say now there is a 40% onto the budget, 40% cut, and looking for 600 billion to compensate into, you know, the health system. Can I say that it was a wrong planning? How could we have done better?
We cannot say it was wrong planning because the emergency of COVID, I would say, has affected governments all over the world. And unfortunately, you cannot predict the way COVID will behave. What happened is in 2019, 2020, of course, when it hit, government had not thought about planning for COVID. That budget was badly affected and its performance. But when it came to the planning for 2020, 2021, we had an experience of COVID, okay? So in that particular budget, the considerations of COVID was actually taken on. But remember, that was the first wave of COVID is the one that gave a basis for that kind of planning. But when it came to the
budget
planning,
weeks
the
and
planning
processes
and budgeting for the financial year, which we have started, the second wave hit harder. So, and remember, government was basing on how COVID behaved the previous financial year. But now the second wave hit harder. And so it required more resources. Okay? So it is something you cannot really predict. Much as the budget actually had considered COVID, but not to the magnitude at which COVID hit. So we cannot say that government didn't foresee. This was a foreseen event. It was a foreseen occurrence. And so we really cannot say government planned badly. It's just because you can't predict the behavior of COVID. And if you look at the impact of this second wave, it was worse than the first wave. Of course, knowing the number of deaths that happened, knowing that many people are not vaccinated, and of course impacting on the economy, the lockdown came through, and all this affected operations across, within government, within the social sectors, within all these other, you know, national operations. And so in terms of financing the budget, we know very well that that has been a constant destabilizer. COVID is what I mean. But we know that government has found ways, has tried to work out ways to manage financing of such emergencies. In terms of loans, we have seen reallocations of the budget within ministries. Of course, what government looks at is looking at a priority within a ministry. If that is not of so much of a priority, because I mean they have to save lives, so they would reallocate it. And even that 600 billion is money that was just reallocated amongst ministries. And that comes as a result of looking at which one is more of a priority. If it can wait, that is what government was looking at. Then that money was collected and then transferred to the Ministry of Health.
Very well, I do understand. And in case you just joined in, this is Juliet AKELLO here from CSBAG, a budget specialist, and we'll be discussing on expectations of the financial year 2022-2023 financial year budget and the conferencing that will be happening, or it is going to be conferenced today at AKELLO Independence Grounds, where we expect the President Museveni to be there officiating it. But before we get to that expectations or to that part, we are still assessing, analyzing, as well as talking about how we are currently living with the financial year 2021-2022 budget allocation that actually were made. And so far we have moved on, I think, the 3 months from effective July, August, September.
first quarter.
First quarter.
the
So the first
financial
quarter
year.
of the financial year, we're on that journey. And I want us to be talking about health, especially the health allocations, the health impact, as well as something that I cannot surely live without talking about, the public debt. But we'll be getting there. Still on health, and the vaccination process, how satisfying has been government onto handling this with the budget, the vaccination process in the country?
I really wish to commend government for the far it has come in terms of putting in efforts to ensure that we even access the little vaccines that we have, we have accessed. Because conversations around the world is that access to this kind of to vaccinations has been really a great challenge, especially to the African continent. That is something which is public knowledge. But in terms of knowing how far we have gone, of course, we haven't really gone so far, in terms of the target within which government wants to meet in terms of vaccination. And even if there are allocations to vaccinations, the access to it, because you can allocate, but then you fail to access the vaccination. And from discussions, we realize that government is actually failing to access the vaccinations because, the vaccines, because there is a long procedure and the demand is actually high. Because if you notice, the first time we received vaccines,
that is in March.
That is in March, but then we were supposed to receive vaccines from India. We had made arrangements, and of course we all know what happened to India. They got hit, and that arrangement was
they cut off countries.
Yes, so of course they had to care for their own. But in terms of what government can do, the economy will have to run based on how much or how many people are vaccinated. Because with the COVID pandemic, we seem to realize that it will forever be distorting operations, economic activities, it will be distorting general operations within the country. And so you notice that for as long as people are not vaccinated, the economic growth will keep going low and low. And we know that once economic growth is not is really not picking up, then it affects all other economic operations. And the case in point is when, of course, the lockdown came, businesses shut. We know that government gets finances from or revenue from taxation. And so if all these economic activities have gone low, then government cannot actually get this revenue to be able to even finance the ministries' activities and all this. So in terms of vaccination, I would say that would be the main
How would you rate it? How would you rate Ministry of Health onto this one on 100? How would you rate it?
Maybe it has done maybe about 20%, 20 to 30%.
That is very still far.
Yeah, that is still, because if the target is about 22
million
people, and I don't know the figures, but I don't think they have hit 5 million. 5 million people fully vaccinated.
We are still less of that.
Yes, but even if you took the first jab, you are not considered fully vaccinated. And I know many people have taken the first jab and they haven't yet accessed the second. Much as they haven't accessed it, we know that government is trying, because we have seen a number of vaccines being received, and to some extent government cannot force people to do vaccination. It is a voluntary process. And so if the vaccines are here and citizens are also not volunteering or voluntarily going for the vaccines, that is also a setback. But with all efforts, we believe that government is striving and struggling so much to ensure that its citizens are vaccinated. Because if people are not vaccinated, if a third wave came, I can assure you the only strategy will still be a lockdown. And we have seen how the lockdown has set us backwards.
Yes, and we have a budget conference today. What would be betterly done or betterly improved? What is your appeal as Juliet, as CSBAG? What do you want to see changing in the Ministry of Health?
Now, the budget conference basically just gives an overview of what government wishes to do within the next financial year. And just to say that this is one of the processes of the next financial year, 2022-2023. So whatever it is that government is looking at is, one, they are looking at economic recovery, because that one is key for any government to run. The economy has to be up and running. The economy has to recover. But then the other focus should actually be still on vaccination, like I explained earlier. Because if the population is not vaccinated, then you are sure economic recovery is not going to happen.
Or if people are not healthy.
Yeah, of course. if you have a big population and the quality in terms of health and education is not there, then you really don't have you don't have a quality population, you know. And so it is about how many people, how much more can we do vaccinations for people, and then the economy can recover, because then the people will have to take on economic activities. But needless to say is that we also realize that many businesses went low. You know, some businesses closed, and so there is a lot of unemployment, you know, within the country.
Yes, before we go to business, Juliet, let's talk and at least exhaust health. Like, what should really be considered in the next financial year?
Vaccination.
On health. Vaccination.
Vaccination would be the main, you know, because I mean, if you don't vaccinate people, people will still fall sick. So the focus should be on high levels of vaccination.
Not considering putting health plants, I mean oxygen plants on hospitals, hospital beds, vaccination.
You know, when you are doing planning in policy making, why look at the other side? Because then it's like you are wishing people to actually come to hospital. Okay. So vaccination is the first line, I would say, of treatment that we should actually look at, so that you avoid people being admitted. Okay, I mean, those are other subsidiary inputs. You know, I mean, the second wave gave us that thinking that, oh, we need a lot of oxygen, we need a lot of ICU facilities, we need a lot of, health facilities to be fully facilitated, to be able to, you know, to address the COVID cases that maybe would be coming in. I mean, that is a given. That is a given. But vaccination is something that should try as much as possible to stop people reaching those levels. Okay,
I mean, do you have any advice to government? Because we see vaccinations, vaccines are delaying, honestly, you know, to come to the country, and a lot of responses are really taking long, and Ugandans are concerned. How better can government handle this? If you could have any advice for them.
You know, government has a limit.
Okay.
Government has a limit. If you noticed, for both lockdown periods, the president has been very categorical in terms of advising people on what to do. Okay. And for me, I appreciate that. I appreciate the Minister of Health. Within the period, they gave out a lot of information to citizens. They provided that information to an extent that when the second wave came, people at least had lots of information about COVID. Much as it was getting out of hand, people had information. Now, to give government advice, government can go so far as giving information, please don't do the other, please put on your masks, please. But it takes personal initiative, as me, as you, in terms of keeping yourself from contracting COVID. Because if you walked in town, now that the lockdown was lifted, if you went to Chikubo, if you went to the market, you would count the number of people who are putting on masks. And that is the basic thing that anyone can actually have to protect themselves. You are not going to have government whip everyone. Please put on your mask. Please put on your... I mean, no one has that time.
Okay.
The issue is, much as government is advising, much as government is doing its work in terms of finding out ways of doing vaccinations, trying as much as possible to equip health facilities. Of course, the equipping is a bit inadequate, but we notice that, I mean, they have tried. They have tried to their ability. The mandate falls on me, the citizen.
And we will pick it from there when we do return from the break. What have you done, or how are you helping government to curb this novice of coronavirus, in case you're not putting on your mask when you're in a very, I can say, congested place, and congestion is really there, and then you're not caring? I mean, how do you expect someone to care, someone else to care for you? We do take a break. When we do return, we'll be speaking on the public debt. We'll be tackling at least on how government can help on education, as well as expectations on the 2022-2023 financial year. We take a break.
Smart 24, driving business.
I smile when I think of you, Uganda, my home. My home, I dance when I look at you, Uganda, my home. Oh, my Uganda.
I know, with you I'll always stay forever. I know, because I feel that we belong together. My home. Under the moon at night, on my heart, mommy, oh my Uganda.
Hey mama,
my Uganda.
Oh,
my Uganda.
Oh,
my Uganda. My Uganda. Nigokone, my Uganda. Amari.
At MTN, we look forward to starting another exciting journey together to grow our home, Uganda. Smart 24, driving business.
The taste of Uganda in a new international park.
You know, prevention is always better than cure. Let's not go for prayers in mosques, congregational prayers. Let's all value the gift of life by maintaining the SOPs. Without that, COVID-19 is with us.
Protect yourself from COVID-19 by washing your hands with soap, wearing your mask, keeping your distance, getting vaccinated, avoiding crowds, staying at home, and avoiding shaking hands and hugging.
Smart 24, driving business.